Okay, everyone, good evening. 7 o'clock. I'll call to order the city council meeting of the city of Prospect, regular meeting. It's Monday, April 15th, 2024 at 7 o'clock p.m. We have a guest this evening. Debbie Westland is candidate for the Kentucky State House, District 48. And along with a lot of other people in this room, is my good friend. So Debbie, we're glad to have you here. If you want to step up to the lectern. And 3 minutes.
Get started a bit. So hello, everyone. I am Debbie Westland. I live not too far from you in Barber Manor, right off Barber Lane. And I am running to be the representative for the State House, District 48, which you're part of, and part of. It's a pretty big district. I've lived in Louisville, my family and I, for almost 30 years. My daughter was well educated in Jefferson County Public Schools and has a great career now. I've already served the community in a variety of ways. I've served on the JCPS Board of Education for 8 years, which isn't always an easy job. As you can see in the news now, it seems like such a big organization. There's often things you have to deal with that are difficult, but also wonderful things. I've been president of our neighborhood association. I also serve on the board of directors of the Greater Louisville YMCA and was involved in the approval and building of the Norton Common School and the Y. So I feel that was a wonderful thing to have that partnership. Now they have a partnership in West Louisville as well. After I left the Board of Education, I became a trainer for the Kentucky School Boards Association. I presented at conferences and school districts on how to evaluate superintendents and on the ethics of being a board member. I was also called in to work with boards who weren't getting along, and that was hard, but it was definitely necessary. Before moving here, I lived in Washington, D.C. for about 12 years, mostly working on Capitol Hill for a couple of members of Congress. I worked for one member, Mike Steiner, for several years. He was known for his courageous stands on guns and tobacco, for example, and he won a Profile and Courage Award from the Kennedy family. I learned a lot from that experience, that you set high standards for yourself, treat others with respect, and do what you say you'll do. If I'm elected to the legislature, my goal is to promote and support public education, not only in money, but in words and deeds. They need positive reinforcement sometimes too. It's a difficult job, as you can see now. And that's what I would do. And I think trust is an important character trait. It makes a lot of difference in public service. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Any questions for Debbie?
Do you have an opponent?
I have a primary opponent. I think she's already been here to speak, Kate Farrow. And then the current occupant of that seat is Ken Fleming. Whoever wins the primary would go up against Ken in the fall. Anything else?
Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you all very much.
Nice to see you. All right. The next item on the agenda is approval of minutes, the minutes of the March 18, 2024 council meeting. Those were distributed to the council members. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, is there a motion to approve the minutes as distributed?
Yeah, I'll move it.
Is there a second? Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Minutes are approved. Comments from citizens? No one signed up, but if anyone wants to raise their hand, I'll be glad to call on them. I will say we've got a birthday girl in the room. Susan Nicholson is yesterday. Well, she's going to be giving a report a little later, but happy birthday, Susan, a day late. All right. Next item on the agenda is the mayor's report. I'm going to report this evening on 4 items: the status of tornado recovery, the Adopt a Highway program, the Forestation Board and replacing trees to restore Prospect's tree canopy after the tornado, and the appointment of John Carter as the city's chief administrative officer. And at the end of this report, I'll ask the council to consider that appointment and to vote on it. First, with regard to tornado recovery, Prospect and Metro Louisville have jointly contracted with Ashbrit to remove storm debris. Ashbrit is a national contractor based in Florida that specializes in emergency management and disaster response. Metro Louisville has taken the lead on working with Ashbridge. The total estimated cost is $75,000. Metro Louisville and Prospect have agreed that Prospect would be responsible for its pro rata share of that total amount. Areas in Metro Louisville that the tornado hit include Beachland Beach, Shirley Avenue, and Bass Avenue. I've not toured those areas. However, based on news reports, it is apparent that those areas sustained significant damage. I saw today that Ashbridge is now working in Hunting Creek. The equipment that Ashbridge has employed in this effort is impressive. Based on my observation this afternoon, Ashbridge appears clearly to be up to the job. Prospect, Louisville, and Ashbridge decided 10 days ago that today would be the day that Ashbridge would begin removing storm debris that has been placed at the curb of the city streets. The reason for the 10 days was to allow our residents and Hunting Creek Country Club to get storm damage moved to the street, to the curb, and volunteers helped with that. The club, I know, has had 2 cleanups of the golf course, and volunteers from other clubs have come to assist them in that effort. A group of veteran volunteers who belong to an organization called Rubicon have also came to the city. It's a national organization. Ford Motor Company is a major sponsor of Rubicon, and those veterans work to assist our residents as well. People have employed private contractors to help. A lot of cleanups already taken place, but as you've seen, there's still a lot to go. Second, on a much smaller scale, Prospect Parks has adopted the portion of US 42 that runs through our city through the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet's Adopt a Highway program. There is no cost to the city. The cabinet provides high visibility vests for volunteers and garbage bags. On Saturday morning, April 6th, Liza and I met at the John Evans Pavilion for coffee and donuts with 14 other volunteers, and we had a safety briefing. We then divided into 2 groups and set out on US 42 in different directions. 2 police cars accompanied us, one for each group, with their blue lights flashing. Ron Cundiff was present on Saturday morning and assisted and picked up the 30 large contractor bags that our volunteers had filled. We will ask volunteers to assist 2 more times in 2024, once in the summer and again in the fall. The agreement with the Transportation Cabinet is that we would continue this program for at least 2 years, and they ask that we have 3 cleanup days each of those years. My hope is that this continues well into the future beyond the 2 years that we've agreed to. And the signs that Transportation Cabinet will place signs that say adopt a highway, and that the highway here is adopted by Prospect Parks. And you've seen those signs on other roads, even further up US 42. Third, in view of the loss of trees in Prospect in the April 2 tornado, I have called a special meeting of the Forestation Board. The meeting will take place tomorrow, and I will ask the board to begin work on a plan to restore Prospect's tree canopy. Hunting Creek Country Club reports that they lost approximately 150 trees on their golf course. Extrapolating from that number and adding trees lost in Sutherland, Hunting Creek, the estates of Hunting Creek, it seems likely that the city has lost 500 or more trees. I have invited 2 additional people to join the Forestation Board to assist with this effort. They are David Timmy, who lives on Rockingham and Hunting Creek, and he's agreed to attend and to assist in the effort. I've also asked Stephen Houston, who lives on US 42, to join us, and he has also agreed to assist. Linda Knox and I will keep the council advised as we move forward. The 4th item I will discuss is my nomination of John Carter to serve as the city's Chief Administrative Officer. As I noted in my email sent this afternoon, I have amended the agenda and moved the nomination of John to the mayor's report, so you will be asked to consider the nomination at the conclusion of this report. The new position broadens John's authority to act pursuant to Prospect's ordinance. 18 months, I have come to rely on John's thoughtful and helpful advice. I have on occasion referred to John as being essentially a deputy mayor. Our ordinance does not use that title, but the gist of the ordinance fits John's contributions to the functioning of our city and fits his skill and qualifications. Before I spoke with John about my intent to make this appointment, I spoke with John Evans. Former Mayor Evans expressed his support and encouraged me to take this step. John Carter, Ron Cundiff, and Jeff Gerard comprise the city's senior staff, and the three of them each report to me. We meet on Wednesday mornings. We have a weekly staff meeting, and the group works together very, very well. John's new title will not affect that. Rather, John will serve as the first of three equals. Just as I had spoken with John Evans, I also spoke with Jeff and Ron before I approached John Carter about this. Both expressed their support for the appointment. The major concern that I have heard expressed about the appointment is that certain members of the council do not approve of the ordinance that creates the position. Respectfully, that ship has sailed. The time to voice opposition to the ordinance was at the time of its adoption in 1981, and when it was amended in 1986. Both times the ordinance was approved unanimously by the then existing council. The amendments were approved unanimously in 1986. The ordinance created the position. Kentucky statutes authorized me to make an appointment to fill the position and further provide that the council will decide whether to approve the nominee. Respectfully, the wisdom of the ordinance is not before the council. The question this evening is whether to approve the nomination. As this now is a nomination, no second is needed. However, I'll ask if there is a second to the nomination.
I second it.
Is there discussion?
I have, let me preface this with, I'm a supporter of the concept of that office. However, in reviewing the ordinances, the current ordinance, the job description, if you will, has the words in it that the chief administrative officer has any and all, that's the term used, any and all departments report to that chief administrative officer. In the mayor's, in the ordinance of the mayor's duties, the exact words are used. I'd like to know how we reconcile that. To me, it seems like a vertical organization chart.
Well, by appointments made pursuant to the ordinance, I've got complete confidence in it, and I agree with the ordinance. I know some here don't, but I do, and that's the
Which
nomination.
ordinance are you referring to?
The ordinance that creates the position of chief administrative officer.
Okay, that's not what I'm addressing. The duties of the chief. I'm trying to reconcile two separate ordinances. One for the mayor that says the mayor is responsible for all the departments. The other says that the chief administrative officer is all the reports go through that individual. I'm just trying to reconcile those words.
Well, let me explain how it works. So the four of us work very closely and very collaboratively. There is really little disagreement. So we do real well together. The analogy that I used this afternoon, when I was in law school, I was a laborer, and I had a boss, but I also had a foreman. And if the boss was present, I reported to the boss. If the boss wasn't present, the foreman took the lead. And I think this is an analogous situation. To me, it makes perfect sense. I do not see a problem with it. I think it'll function.
Well, I'm not. I don't see a problem with it. My problem is with the words of our ordinances. If we're going to do this, and you're really changing the role of the chief administrative officer, who the words say they're responsible. Any and all departments report to that office. So that would require an ordinance amendment if that is not the way the thing's going to supposed to work.
Well, I just respectfully disagree. Is there further discussion?
Yes, I'm gonna be comfortable with the whole concept. It's section 4, chief administrative officer has oversight over his peers and has responsibility in the operation those are executive functions and by law. You're the executive of the city. And I don't think you ought to be delegating those responsibilities. Now, if you're out of town or something, you could have somebody be active. But to formalize this, yeah, this is a very narrow organization. You've got 3 or 4 people and you want to put another layer in. That from an organization perspective, that's just counterproductive. Most organizations are tall chimneys, they're flat, they work real effectively.
Yeah.
I think you're delegating responsibility. If you wanted to be mayor, you need the mayor, you need to be the mayor, not delegate responsibility.
And respectfully, you all need to let me be the mayor. Is there further discussion?
Yeah, Mayor, I support this move. I think there's some misreading of the statutes in our discussion here tonight. As I read the mayor's responsibility, it says that he's the chief, or she is the chief executive officer of the city. The CAO it talks about is in the position to advise the mayor and does have responsibility of day-to-day supervision of any involved departments, but still reports to the mayor. So I don't see that it's taking away from the mayor's position or superseding it in any kind of way. I support this for 2 particular reasons. One is I'm not the mayor, I'm a city councilman. We have 2 mayors that have told us, one previous and one current, that this is a good move that the city needs. And I respect that because I'm not in the shoes to be able to figure out whether we need a CAO or don't need a CAO. Secondly, I support it because the ordinances allow us to keep this man as the city clerk and give him the position of CAO. If we were just going to appoint him to be CAO and have to go out and hire another city clerk, I would be against it. But because you get 2 for 1, even if ultimately the council decides that John is entitled to a raise by having this new position, we're still better off having 2 positions in one than we would have with just 2 separate positions having 2 separate bodies. So all in all, I think this is a good move. John is clearly qualified for the position. In my council experience, not in my mayor experience, because I'm not the mayor, but in my council experience, I've only had good experiences working with John. I respect everything he does. He listens and is nice enough to do some of the silly things I ask him to do because I don't have the ability to do it, particularly computer stuff that John's good at. But I think this is a good move for the city, and I think John will do a great job. And I can't imagine it costing us a whole lot of money to have 2 for 1 covering these positions.
So I totally agree, 100%. So David, John, you probably already do much in this city. So this is not about, the only thing that causes umbrage on my side of the house is part of Frank said, when we talk about the responsibility for the age-based supervision of any and all departments of the city, delegating appropriate authority to accomplish mission and functions. And also making monthly reports. And we talked about this. My concern is the future proofing. So right now we've got, everybody in the different parts of the team. So you have a flat organization, that's how everybody kind of administers. My only concern is the future proofing. Because in such a small, very culturally healthy environment, if you future proof, we're all gone, we've all taken, hopefully someday I'll retire. And the next, it actually kind of sets it up for more of a hierarchical structure. And that's my only fear, that's that everyone will not have the equal say so at the table. That's the only thing about a little bit of the how it's worded. it creates a little bit of concern for me. It's not this team is amazing. But for future proofing, I'm just a little concerned this function by job description could say, well, the police will be reporting to me, like Ron will be reporting to me, and there would be more of a hierarchical structure where, when you're talking about a limited amount of people, it can cause a little cultural dissension or mismatch. So that's my concern. But David, John, yeah.
I understand Sarah's concern. I think we have to look at the ordinances, and the ordinance says that the mayor is the chief administrative officer of the city.
Chief Executive.
Chief executive officer of the city. So there is a distinction between the CAO is not going to be able to do legitimately something that the mayor doesn't approve. So it's not like you're going to go out on your own and be doing something that the mayor doesn't. And the CAO is supposed to be keeping the mayor informed on all of what he's doing. And the mayor can say, I don't want you to get into this, or I want you to take more responsibility for this, or whatever. So down the road, yeah, who knows what'll happen years from now in terms of that. But in terms of at least us setting the precedent for how this is going to function, it seems like it's really up to the mayor and John to work out the details of how that functions.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to chime in.
Mayor Evans.
I recently wrote a history book. You haven't seen it yet because it hasn't been printed yet. And all the way back to 1974. And as it relates to this subject, taking reverse chronological order, I had a chief administrative officer. I had Ann Sims, who had been in that office as well as city clerk since 1994, all the way through 2014. She was the chief administrative officer. She also was chief administrative officer. No, she wasn't. During Todd Everly's. Yeah, she was during Todd Everly's time. She was chief administrative officer. That was 2007 to 2013. Lonnie Falk from 1994 to 2006. After Ann left in 2014, I had two more chief administrative officers. I had Holly Levold for 2 or 3 years, and then I had Laura Taylor for a couple of years. Both of them, both city clerk and chief administrative officer. So there's a tremendous amount of history. And you might find this entertaining. The first chief administrative officer was hired by me in 1981. And I told the council, I said, look, I can't be the mayor and be downtown practicing law. I'm going to need somebody on the ground out there. So they said, okay. So I started interviewing people. And one of the candidates was a gentleman named Marvin Parrott. I doubt if any of you knew him, but I did. And so I interviewed Marvin, and it turned out Marvin was a 50-year-old bachelor who lived at home with his mother, who called him Junior. And I thought, oh, geez. But his resume said he'd been in the Marine Corps. So I said, Marvin, what'd you do in the Marine Corps? Well, he said, I carried a rifle ashore at Tarawa. I carried a flamethrower ashore at Iwo Jima. Said, you're hired. So he was the chief administrative. Yeah. So he was a chief administrative officer for 2 or 3 years until one of the members of the council basically drove him out. The next chief administrative officer we had was a gentleman named Donald Calley, who went on later to become mayor. And Calley worked for $1 a year. He didn't need the money, so he just didn't take it. Same thing was true when he was mayor. For the 4 years he was mayor, he didn't take a stuff. So that's the history of the chief administrative officer. And I think this is a very healthy conversation to have, and if there's ordinances that need to be looked at again, maybe modified a little bit to fit the realities of the situation. When I said about trying to hire John Carter, which was toward the end of my 9.5 years, I advertised it as looking at him as a chief administrative officer as well as a city clerk. And there were 3 members of the council who wouldn't come because it was chief administrative officer. So that's why he didn't get hired in the beginning as chief administrative officer. Because we had a little bit of a block there. But I would have hired him as chief administrative officer right then. That's all I have to say.
Is there further discussion?
I want to just finish this. I'm not opposed to this, but I am opposed to creating something that is contrary to what the words in our ordinance say. And the words in the ordinance don't reflect what you're presenting as your proposed organization.
Those are all good comments. Is there further discussion?
Doug,
Yeah,
may
go
I
ahead.
ask Chris Gorman, are we in compliance with the statutes and the ordinances as written?
He's asking if we're in compliance with the ordinance and the statutes.
Yes, I researched it thoroughly and there's no question that we are in compliance if you do this.
Thank you.
Okay, Sarah,
So I want to, let's try to Frank's point. So David, you don't have the same concerns, right? Is that correct? I mean, about the conflicting verbiage of the mayor's responsibility versus the chief administrative
No,
officer.
because it's very clear the CAO reports to the mayor and that the mayor is the chief of the government. He's the chief executive, and that's the language that's used in the ordinances.
So do both ordinances clarify the downstream reporting structure? Meaning, so we understand that this position order reports to the mayor. Do we have like a further reporting structure down for the chief of police would report to? So that's where I'm going one layer.
so let me speak to that if I could.
Sure.
I think in corporate America, there's a different way of doing things. This is not a Fortune 500 company whose stock is traded on the New York Stock Exchange. This is a city government. We are a community. So it's a different kettle of fish. A lot of the business principles apply. I try to be prudent and careful with our citizens' funds and do all that I can in that regard. But the idea that we have to be structured like a Fortune 500 company doesn't work for me. And I don't see it. I think we've got a good system in place. I think to a large extent, we're memorializing what's already in place. So I think it's, to me, it's easy. I don't see the problems. I could concede that the problems might exist in the future, but so could the council in 1981 and 1986 that adopted the ordinance. They had a first reading, they had a second reading. They had a first reading and a second reading when they amended it. It hasn't been repealed. It's still our ordinance. So I'm following what the ordinance says. And I'm asking the council to do what it wants to do. We'll make the decision, not me.
Look, in 1981, as former Mayor Evans pointed out, he was working as a full-time attorney. So he needed someone on the ground at City Hall that kind of direct daily operations and provide monthly reports on matter standards. That's not the case today. And my concern is that down the line, this could easily evolve into something that says the mayor position could be a part-time position, or someone with a full-time job could do the mayor of a prospect's position.
We have an ordinance that
Yeah,
requires full-time mayor. We have an ordinance that says specifically that the mayor's position is a full-time position.
Well, then Where's the value at? What's gonna change?
Not a lot. Not a lot. It really, I don't view a lot of change. I think there's a heightened respect for John. I've seen, since I made this nomination, I've seen John step forward a little more. I've been pleased to see that. I think it gives him a little more stature than he's got presently, and I think that's good for the city. I think it's good for us here in City Hall. That's probably the biggest change that I see.
But this discussion isn't really about John's fitness or any other. I'm sure it's in the conversation. It's just, I think it's a question of the appropriate.
Yeah, I respect just the points that have been made. And I don't mean to have been strident about this, but I've stated my position on it.
Excuse me.
Randy, look, we have something new to offer. Frank, you're welcome to speak again, of course.
Well, my question hasn't been answered. How do you reconcile what you've presented as what works? Okay, I'm for it. What you tell me works, but the words don't represent that. And it's an ordinance, and the ordinance says that the mayor is going to discharge these ordinances.
Frank, I've said all I can say. I can't say anymore.
Frank, I have read it in detail, and from a legal standpoint, I have no problem at all. It clearly spells out that the mayor is the chief executive officer, and as Dave pointed out, there is no conflict. I don't.
How do you, Chris, how do you reconcile
Frank,
the ordinance?
we respectfully make your point one more time, but we've heard it about 4 times.
How do you reconcile what the ordinance, the job description ordinance says, that the chief administrative officer has any and all departments reporting to them? That's what it says. How can you say that now we're going to say that he doesn't have?
Because he reports to the mayor.
But it's an ordinance.
It's the same thing as when I was the attorney general, I had a chief deputy. And
That's,
he had certain responsibilities. I just don't see, I'm searching for a problem.
I don't want to,
Organization is general.
I'm glad for us to continue the discussion, but I think
How
we've,
big was your organization?
138.
And here we've got 4.
run over this dog in the road and we backed up and we run over it again. If somebody wants to run over it one more time, it's got something new to say, they're welcome to. And I respect the opinions that have been expressed. They're from good people and they're made in good faith, but I think we're probably ready to vote. If I'm mistaken, I'll recognize another speaker. Okay, we'll call the roll. John Clark, I'm going to start with you.
Yes.
Frank Fulcher,
no,
David Holmes.
Yes.
John Evans,
Yes.
Don Gibson,
No.
Sarah Hines.
I'm going to say yes.
Right, so the appointment is approved by a vote of 4-2. So we've got a new chief administrative officer, and I appreciate the good discussion, the good points that were made by everyone. And we'll move on with the agenda. So now we've got financial reports. John, ask you to make a report.
I'm summarizing the financials for March 24. Cash on hand at the end of March, which consists of checking, money market account, and PNC investments, total of $3.8 million. Our restricted road fund now has accumulated up to almost $226,000. We are perfect on track as far as our expenditures go. We will talk about the budget here later this meeting. The little bit that I know about the tornado cleanup, a good guesstimate on the city costs at this point would be about $200,000. Most of that's greenscape and Ashford spill, which we won't know for a little bit. But so we may revisit the budget after this evening rather than this evening so that we can add those particular figures into the revised budget. And if you got any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
I have one.
Yes.
John, as far as you know, is there any state federal assistance available. The tornado cleanup was been declared an emergency and stuff.
So Amy Rose, who is heading up Louisville Emergency Management Services, has the best fix on all the costs. Her information is she doubts that we will make the cut. The county has to have $3+ million to make it, to even, be entertained. 3.6, and then the state itself has 6.
I think it's over 8.
Is it
It's over 8 million, and she reports that we're not close on either.
correct?
So it's very discouraging. In the windstorm in March of 2023, it did qualify, it did meet the thresholds, and we did receive FEMA reimbursement. And it just seems ironic to me. We have a tornado come through and there's no federal funds available, but it looks like that's where things are. We'll explore to see if there's state funds or metro funds that might be available to us.
I will say Amy Rose is on top of it, and
She's done a great job.
she will not leave money on the table. She's
So John, um, in looking at the damage issue, do they assess the value of the tree? Are tree values part of?
no.
Amy said in a meeting that the average tree is $1,000. That's to cut it down and dispose of it properly.
Boy, I wish I could
No.
pay the tree
Well, that's
people
all.
that much on my property.
But to answer your question, it sounds funny because it's about.
So they look at it differently than reality. Anyhow, okay. I'm just curious because I think with the number of trees we have, we'd be in the millions of dollars.
Yeah. John, I have a question for you. What debris are they picking up in addition to trees and bushes? On my circle, there's people that have lost wooden fences and they put that out.
They'll pick that up.
They'll pick it up eventually.
Yeah, they'll pick up basically anything that's storm related, whether it's construction debris, that's like the roof
Okay,
blown off.
There's some metal fencing and
Yeah.
stuff like
If
that.
it-
It's segregated the tree.
Okay, that they went
there are
through and did the
rules about
trees now, but this is still left, so.
Yeah, they'll come back.
I've been asked,
That's probably
You know,
what,
how
because
come?
they segmented,
okay,
they probably just picked up
Yeah.
the one batch. And
thank you.
Yeah, pass the word back. Our understanding is they'll pick all that up.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Frank. Okay, thank you, John. Commission and board reports. Timely to hear from Linda Knox, our new chair of the Forestation Board.
I have a feeling we're going to be talking about trees a lot. So let's start with some good news. One thing I can share with you is that we are ready to do the new canopy plantings for this year. So that's good trees coming into town. The other good news we got from Andrea Hanlon is within the last few years on public spaces, we plant between 15 and 20 trees. All of those trees made it through the storm. So that's a little bit of good news. Now, what happened, I don't know if any of you have had a chance to read the notes from our meeting. It occurred after the packets went out, but the main conversation we had last Thursday was in response to the storm. So we were looking at not only what resources do we have, how do we get the community involved, how do we provide guidance for them, where can we go? So since that time, we have reached out and learned things, the Kentucky Division of Forestry is one contact. MSD has an urban reforestation program. That might be a possibility. The Arbor Day Foundation has a community tree recovery program, and that are all things we may be eligible for. I've reached out to Trees Louisville, and I think some of you are aware that LG&E also has a program. And that at the same time, Andrea Hanlon, our arborist, was going to reach out to some of the wholesale nurseries to see if there could be a program available to residents to make it more attractive and easier for them to get trees to replace what they've lost. Because certainly probably everything you read, the majority of trees, and Don talked about this earlier, that he talked with Cindy Sullivan, that most of the losses are on private property. So we looked at, trying to find out what trees would be available in this area to people, trying to create new lists to guide them in tree selection. So you get not only the right tree in the right place. So there's some opportunity to really improve what we're doing, but it's not going to be easy, but certainly that's a key focus. And I think the meeting tomorrow with the mayor and anybody that's interested will be very meaningful. And I could share some of the details of some of these outreaches that we have in process. And I may have more information from them. Some of them have already gotten back, like Kentucky Forestry, Jack Baggett, our normal contact. There is a forestry assistance grant program, but Prospect's not eligible. So, but I think some of these others are, like urban forestation program. It's $2,600 to $6,000. And I think it's a little bit more flexible in terms of tree availability. And they have a budget and they have an approved list of trees. So I think there's a lot of things that as we gather information and we get more information on where our losses are, then we can come up with a plan to kind of guide the neighborhoods, guide the city, and hopefully be successful in investing in recovering some of the major loss we've had. So there's a lot to do, but I think we're kind of excited to see what we can fix and make it even better. So that's kind of where we are, a lot to do. If there's any particular comments, questions, suggestions of just thing you've heard from anybody or any contacts you may have use, please share them.
Yeah, I would take into account the age of the trees too, because, sapling torn down is, a 50-year-old.
Yeah, it is where we can gather that information. So obviously some of these things, huge trees that were split, you still see root balls like this leaning out of the ground. So that does make a difference, absolutely. And that will be one of the questions to look at when you replace a tree is, was that the right tree for that place?
Right.
Is it going to grow and be the right size? Is it going to be impacted by the soil, by the water, by power lines, or any other things that, can kind of create an issue?
Linda, would you state again for the public when the meeting tomorrow is going to be?
It will be at 2:00 here at City Hall. It will not be on WebEx. So anybody that's listening, hopefully that has an interest in trees, and right now who doesn't care about trees and prospects? So we hope we get a good turnout and people with ideas, and they can kind of get involved with some of the things we're pursuing, and, fingers crossed that, we're going to have a good program and move forward.
Other questions or comments for Linda? Linda, thank you.
Work in
Thanks.
progress.
You're
Thank
doing a
you.
great job. Really appreciate it. We all do. Other reports. Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. I think Carolyn Embry is going to make that report this evening.
Well, the Parks and Recreation Committee didn't meet this past month. Our meeting had been scheduled for the previous Monday. And I think about half of our members were off viewing the total eclipse of the sun. And then Linda wasn't available either, but she has prepared a report, as she is so faithful in doing. So I just wanted to give a few highlights from that. The mayor's already reported on the Adopt a Highway effort that was held on April 6th. And I just wanted to add that this effort was coordinated by Parks Committee member Tina Bevan. And Tina reported that about 16 volunteers collected 30 bags of trash and enough parts to build an entire car. So it was a huge success, and thanks to Ron and the mayor for initiating this program. I think it's a good thing for the city of Prospect. The next day, April 7th, the first wildflower walk took place in Harrods Creek Park. And it was led by Jacqueline McGrail. I assisted, as did Sally Schneider. And we had thought that if there was too large a group, we would split into two separate groups and walk at different paces. But that wasn't necessary. So we had one nice leisurely walk and saw many beautiful blue, purple, lavender, yellow, and white wildflowers. And our second wildflower hike will take place this coming Sunday, April 21st at 1 p.m. Now, a second bird walk was held just yesterday in Harrods Creek Park. This was organized by Sally Schneider and led by Jacob Kreider, who is the naturalist at Creasy Mahon Nature Preserves. Sally reported that the walk attracted a couple of people that had never been to any of our parks. And this is just an example of our efforts to offer a variety of activities and events in all of our parks to appeal to people of all age groups and interests. And there's a lot more of that to come in the future months. Now, coming up on April 28th at 2 p.m. is our first spring summer event in the John E. Evans Pavilion. And that's going to be Shakespeare in the Park that will perform A Midsummer Night's Dream. So everyone is invited and hope to see you there. For the Scout update, we currently have 2 Eagle Scout candidates, each building a kiosk. And we are hoping that at least one of the kiosks will be completed by the end of May. And finally, the parks were not spared during the recent storm. In addition to several trees down, the bench swing on the Blue Trail in Harrods Creek Park was damaged by a fallen tree. And we're currently in touch with a builder to get a proposal to rebuild this popular feature. So that concludes our report. Are there any questions?
Questions for Carolyn? David?
So, Carol, I would just like to add to what you said about the activities in summer concert series. The city has put out, as you know, a postcard, and this probably won't show up on video, but it talks about the 50th anniversary of Prospect. And then on the back of the postcard has all of the concert series that we're having and events that we're having this summer. And I hope everybody who receives one, and it should be sent to all of the addresses at Prospect, will put it in the refrigerator to remind them of coming out to the concerts.
Exactly. I got mine in the mail today.
I got mine yesterday.
And so, and we'll be doing further promotion on all the events, and we'll be telling you more about them as the time nears these various events. Thank you.
Thanks, Carolyn. And I'll add a footnote to Carolyn's report, and that is that 3 of the paintings, 2 in the council room and 1 in the conference room, were painted in Harrods Creek Park. These 2 were not in the original exhibition. They were painted by Kathy Sauer, who chaired the first exhibition. And the next exhibition is scheduled for late June, and it's called Artists of 40059. But it was, I was sorry to see the paintings go from the first exhibition, so I asked the committee to create a pop-up exhibition. So this is artwork primarily by members of the committee, and it's really, there's a lot of fun items. Kathy has sold the one with the bench. I know because I purchased it. So there's a red dot on it. The one in the conference room by Liz Coombs, we tried to purchase, but she had second thoughts and decide she didn't want to sell it. So we asked her if she would loan it to the city, and it is on hopefully indefinite loan. So we might get the best of both worlds on that. Yeah, Carolyn.
By the way, that painting that you were talking about features wild hyacinths. Those have been doing that on Blue Trail.
Yeah, it's a wonderful painting. So anyway, enjoy the art and enjoy the parks. All right, next on the agenda is the investment committee. Susan Nicholson.
Well, good evening. The investment committee report that you received in advance really includes 2 items. There's a revised investment policy statement for your consideration and adoption later in the meeting under Municipal Order 2. I mentioned it a little bit at our last report that the council approved an investment policy statement, I believe in January of 2023. And it was one that was adopted from a model recommended by the Kentucky League of Cities at the time. And the Prospect Investment Committee reviewed that and had some recommended changes to simplify it and clarify it. So those recommendations were submitted to the Kentucky League of Cities, and they revised their sample statement, incorporating several of our suggestions. So it's this revised sample statement that you're going to be asked to approve. The second item of interest on the report is what will be a standard quarterly report. This, the March report compares the investments that were held at December 31st, 2023 to what was held March 31st, 2024. And then it explains any changes that took place during the quarter. And there's two items of note here. First, there was a CD that was just over $1 million that matured during the quarter. Those funds were then taken and the proceeds were invested in the investment pools sponsored by the Kentucky League of Cities. That amount was split between a money market fund and an enhanced income fund. Neither of those two funds have any stock market exposure, and the committee wants to start slowly moving in that direction. So in January, at the committee's recommendation, an allocation of $5,000 per month into an S&P 500 fund began. And it's the committee's goal to continue this strategy of $5,000 per month until that investment fund reaches probably a couple $100,000, 225 is what we're thinking. With the strong stock market returns of January, February, March, that proved a profitable strategy, and it added actually in that short period of time about $1,000 in investment earnings. Overall, for the quarter, investment earnings were just shy of $41,500. So any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. It's a great committee.
Thank you for creating that committee.
I
You've
feel
assigned
like
some good people
In
to
a
it.
graduate level course on that 10 meetings. I've learned a lot. Okay, thanks again, Susan. Next item on the agenda is Jefferson County League of Cities. Don, any report there?
Yes, Thursday, March 21st, member meeting, two speakers. One was Cindy Sullivan, the Executive Director of Urban Investment Plan, Reeves Lowell. Cindy's goal, 20-year goal, is to increase the tree canopy 45% to 39%. Through education, advocacy, collaboration, planning, and maintenance. I thought it was interesting. It's a 20-year goal to go from 39% to 45%. She had some interesting statistics. There was a Georgia Tech study on cities' temperature changes throughout the country. Global average temperature was at 1.6 degrees in the last 20 years. The highest urban area in the country. The next highest was Phoenix, 0.9 degrees. She said 72% of the tree logs are on private land, 60% of tree level pollutants are removed by trees. Single family home construction is the biggest contributor to tree loss. And I thought this was interesting. Urban growth is predicted to increase 7% in 2050. Next speaker was Colleen Younger, Jefferson County Property Evaluation Administrator. She says the basic rule is 100% fair value, market value by details reviewed of all property every 4 years. And all areas are reviewed annually for substantial market change. So we have to review everyone's property individually is going to be reviewed every 4 years. Areas can be reviewed annually. For instance, she pointed out same measures had gone up substantially in terms of market value. Her methodology is fair arm's length sales by house type using comparability permits relevant sample sizes. She discussed the method and one of the dates to challenge. And in the challenge, he is second, getting pictures, documentation. One of the things they have done, it used to be you had to go down to downtown to get it done. Now they're opening up, they having these meetings at many of the libraries need to get more accessible. April 26th, and that assessment from cities is, and will be, to determine their compensation rate and final tax rate. Cities, about 15,000 have $1.50 per hundred, 9, 10, $1, and under 10, like Prospect, 75 cents per hundred. Saturday, March 23rd, there was a training meeting, and Independence Bank did a seminar on cybersecurity. And they talked about check fraud, wire ACH fraud, business email compromising, phishing, senior executive spoofing. But if you walk away from one thing there, it said almost everything starts with an email. And that you need to be very careful when, as an individual, as a city, to look at the email and make sure it's authentic. Gave an example of one of the local hospitals where a clerk was sent information she thought was from the hospital's personnel. She was sure it was their website. She filled in an information and allowed the people sending it to get into the hospital. They wanted like $10 million or so. The hospital chose not to pay it. And what they did is just rebuilt the infrastructure. But again, the key thing is the emails. Click on something that you recognize. Kelly Johnson from Municipal Rule Fund was there. She said 22.2% of gas tax is distributed every city in the county by population. She kind of was selling the emergency option. I guess there's two options. One option is you get a monthly payment of your allocation. So if your allocation is $12,000, you get $1,000 a month. The other one is the emergency option, which 3% is held back by the department. You pay allocations in 3 times, so you get, in the case of $12,000, $3,000, $4,000. But if there's an emergency, it's 80-20 in the cost. And clearly from some cities in eastern Kentucky, look, the roads are one washed out once a year or whatever, it makes sense to do the emergency option. So I think the rest is probably the risk assessment. The next one is occupation tax. Brent Hagan talked about several of the larger urban cities have brought into the occupation tax. I think Middletown, St. Matthews did it quite a while ago. Brent Hagan of Mary Linden just did it. And Linden is growing to a population of 12,000 people. As part of that group is UPS. And he said, UPS is a little bit upset with you. And yet they hold a couple of meetings. They wanted to know why. He pointed out because they were benefiting from city services, for instance, the police. And if they called the police or had an incident in their parking lot, the Linden police would respond. They still weren't happy. The next one is business license. Anyone who earns an income in the city, including small businesses, people doing gig work, this one that was interesting, work from home residents can be eligible for business license. I don't know if that's what they want to pursue. Another one, property tax. Basic House Bill 44 was enacted in 1979. 3 main sections. Number 1, it's the city has to adopt a compensating rate. That means a rate that generates the same revenue as previous year, exclusive of new property. If the city decides to adopt a rate up to 4% higher than in public hearing and advertising, chickens and local newspaper. If they go above 4%, then the same public meetings and the same advertisement, but there's the voter can petition that rate above 4% to be a recall, and it only takes 10% of 4%. The last one was insurance tax. It says most cities average about 5%, but many are going to 8%, but they must raise it by ordinance by March. Questions?
As always, thank you for working with the League of Cities. And I think there's a Jefferson County League of Cities night at the Bats coming up.
Yes, it is.
We'll get word out on that.
June 13th, it's $25 per person. And again, there's $5 ticket boxes, food, drink, club level seating, and it's for, it's for, city employees.
No, and volunteers. So we had a good turnout last year and we'll certainly invite our volunteers to attend again this year. And it was a lot of fun. I would encourage people to participate in that. Thanks again, Don. Next item on the agenda is the council committee for reviewing and reconciling proposed versions of the amending the forestation ordinance. So Frank, David, or Sarah, do you have
I do. I put together all the notes that I could find from the last meeting and distributed to Sarah, and we get it after the meeting, unless you, did you get your email? Okay, then, and comments are gonna come back, and then I'm gonna get with Linda and review it and identify any areas that there's disagreement on. And at that point, we'll have another committee meeting, and that will be the final. We'll present an ordinance amendment to the council and identify areas of dispute or disagreement. And they can be presented with the ordinance proposed amendment such that people can vote up or down on various specific issues. They can propose amendments at that point.
I'd like to invite the committee to include me in the discussion at some point in its deliberations. I'll remind everyone present, I don't have a vote unless there's a tie, but I have a veto. And I'll use it if we don't come up with an ordinance that improves what we've got. And I'm concerned about the process and the length of time it's taken and the absence of dealing with some of the key issues, which for me are improving enforcement, assisting the forestation board with enforcement, and increasing the size of the forestation board. So I look forward to working with the committee and seeing what's been done, and hopefully we can improve the current ordinance. Okay, police report.
Okay, first, the regular part of the report, house checks were up about 600 over the month compared to 23 last year, March 24 to 23. The report is incorrect with regards to citations. It wasn't 5, it's actually 11. I have 11 of them here in the book. With regards to the reports, we do have like 11 felony reports listed on here. That's a lot. All of these are related for the most part to theft or checks, the thing with checks. And something new that sort of popped up in the last few months, and even a special agent from the FBI came down and talked to us. She lives in Foxhole, that's why I said she came down. She came down the hill, and she works in the check division. And I'm sure we've all seen the movie Take the Money, and I wouldn't take the money, right? It was Catch Me If You Can. Catch Me If You Can with Leonardo DiCaprio. And the gist of that was that check washing, and that somebody could take a check out of a mailbox and then they could wash certain components off, the ink off, and then reissue the check. Well, she told us a couple of months ago that's really starting to happen again. Well, it's hit Prospect. Apparently somebody has been able to get into mailbox, perhaps one of the ones like on Timber Ridge or out front over here. It's difficult to get anybody to say that, yeah, we've had a theft of the mailbox, but that's apparently what's happened, because I took one on Friday and the guy says, no, we paid a bill and we paid it here and we dropped it in this mailbox. And what occurs is they wash out who the check's made to, and they wash out the number and then rewrite it. For example, this one was made out for $140 to one of the utilities. And the check was altered to where it said $4,100 or $4,400 or whatever. And it was made out to an individual with like an African name and then cashed. And that was on a Republic Bank. And then this guy was just checking online through his account and sees this suspicious account or suspicious transaction.
and then confronts his wife and said, "Hey, what'd you spend $4,400 on?" She said, "I don't know what you're talking about." And then reviewed her check register and saw what it was for. And then we went back and checked, and we had another guy that had two of them exactly like that, where he had two checks stolen out of a mailbox. So that's sort of prevalent. So I would recommend mailing from inside. You know, they've got an internal box there in there until they can figure out what is happening with some of these mailboxes, if you're still using the snail mail. We did have a purse that was taken. Initially, I thought it was going to be from the park, but it wasn't. If somebody used a Lyft, like, you know, Uber or Lyft, they used a Lyft and then forgot about the purse, and then goes back to contact Lyft. Well, they took the purse and then all the contents from it. And it happened to be a Louis Vuitton purse, so it was about a $3,000 oops. We had two instances of, I guess, vendors that people had hired to perform work, and they just completely fleeced the residents. One was a tree cutting service. They gave them a deposit and they never performed any service. So in that case, it's not really a civil matter. It is criminal if you don't do anything. And then we had one with a contractor that was supposed to perform work inside a home. They paid him a deposit. The guy was supposed to get materials. He never did anything. So we actually took a warrant for the contractor last week on that one. So we knew he did that. And then we had a stolen truck that was recovered the following day by Louisville Metro. And ironically, that vehicle was seen on Flock out in Oldham County. Like the next day, the same vehicle was seen and it had a different tag on it. So we reported the stolen tag, even though it wasn't in our jurisdiction. We reported that tag, and then that tag was seen on Flock out in the west end, out off Cameron Road, and then Metro recovered it based on the fact that we reported that new tag out in Oldham County is being stolen, then it was picked up on. So that's how they recovered that truck. So that was good on Sergeant McKeon for doing that. Okay, that's the regular part of the reports. There's really nothing else that was earth shattering. Now, I know that they're going to talk about the budget here in a little bit, but I did want to provide you an update on the police department and some concerns that we have. Currently, we have vacancies. We have 2 full-time vacancies and 1 part-time vacancy. As you all recall, Officer Thomas retired in October of 23. And Officer Ernst, you probably won't remember that name. He wasn't here very long. He retired back in February of this year, 23 or 24. And Thomas had just retired. Ernst resigned to take another position with one of the departments that's paying a much higher salary. And we lost Officer Gray last May because he did the same thing. He took a much higher paying position. He returned to LMPD to do the same. At the end of, or at the beginning of March, our administrative assistant, Jill Vidito, retired. She was full-time, and also her position was in the retirement system. But we did hire somebody in her place. We hired a part-time individual, but they are not in the retirement system. We don't have to pay any other sort of benefits. It's strictly a salary thing. So that was a big savings for the city. In January of this year, we also converted Officer Hagan's position. His position was one that we had to pay a benefit package to. We had to pay for into the retirement system for him. And also he was a retiree from LMPD. We had to pay into the retirement system for him. And also we had to pay or reimburse the state for his health insurance. The reason we had to do that is we were allowed to have 5 people on what they call as a yearly renewable contract. And the law changed last year. That's why we were able to make a change. But prior to that, we could only have 5 people. The 2 of us are on that. You don't pay into the retirement system for either one of us or reimburse for our health care. I changed that about 8 years ago, and it has saved the city hundreds of thousands of dollars. So anyway, so we converted Hagan this year, and he's on a contract because last year with a bunch of things that were going on in the state, they allowed it where you can have small departments can have more people on it. So basically anybody that we hire now, if it's a retiree, we can put them all on the yearly contract. So we can avoid paying all of the into the CERS, the retirement system. And that is a huge savings for the city. Okay. And with Officer Thomas's retirement back in the fall, we also saved on his, I guess where we put in for his CERS, he was in the hazardous pension and also his insurance package. Between those 3 changes, we are saving $77,000 a year, and that will only go up, that figure, because with health insurance costs and everything like that, and as the pension system goes up, just those 3 changes alone will save the city, again, $77,000 a year, each year, and that number will go up. And now, what we are facing is the possibility of losing personnel because we are falling woefully behind in salary compared to all of our neighboring departments. I want to get those out. And I was asked last week to get comparisons on what people are paying. The area police departments are paying. And all of these departments that are on here, and the ones that we have comparisons for, just so everybody knows, is Linden, which they just mentioned, LaGrange Police Department, Oldham County Police, Middletown. Actually, this year, the Jefferson County Schools Police, they now have a police department that's made up of all retirees. Indian Hills, St. Matthews, the Jefferson County Sheriff, and then, of course, Louisville Metro Police. I didn't get anything back yet from J-Town, so they're not listed on here. But just for comparison, you can see the one officer that we lost recently went to Oldham County. And you can see from that the difference. And I will tell you that, and it tells you what his total compensation package would be of $82,362. That includes the CLEP pay that you see on there and a take-home vehicle. A take-home vehicle is estimated a value of anywhere between $5,000 to $7,000 a year. Is what they consider to be a fair conservative estimate of what it could be worth to somebody. Now you see their package, and then our current package is at $64,040. That's the beginning salary, and adding in CLEP pay is what we currently pay. So you can look down the list and see everything else. The closest ones by comparison to salary are Middletown and Indian Hills, but we are not losing personnel to those departments. So, but the ones that we have, of course, we've lost to Metro, but that's just a crazy figure that you see down there. Nobody can compete with that figure of $80,000 as a starting figure. Now that's a retiree rehire, which is what we do. And that's what a lot of them do. Now, one that's really changed in the last few years, the Jefferson County Sheriff, in the last 3 years, their salary's gone up about $25,000 in the last 3 years. Some of the other ones, they stand alone. The new one is the Jefferson County Schools. The legislature in the last few years, they've added so much to do with school safety. So now they've got, is it like 18 people I think it's 16, 17, 18 officers that they have take-home cars and they put them in, and it's during daylight hours. And they're assigned a number of schools and they just patrol between a number of schools and they just respond to something happen. And the starting salary for that was $76,000.
Jeff, I think you indicated our starting salary, $64,040.
That's with Clef. Without Clef, it's $59,740.
Okay, so that would be this comparable number of the ones that are listed here as total for each of these different departments.
Yes, the one that would be closest would be Middletown and Indian Hills. That's the ones we're closest to, but they also have the take-home car, which, you know, if that is something that appeals to an applicant, then, you know, could that be a deciding factor? I don't know.
I don't understand your numbers here.
Okay.
But you're saying our starting salary is 64.
No, that's with the CLEP pay. Our starting salary is actually $59,740.
But with the flex pay, it's goes to 64.
Yeah, with CLEP, that's the, yes, that's for what a retiree that we hire.
So Indian Hills, for instance, it's 65,800 starting salary with the funding for that. That's right.
Mhm.
So that's what we're, Indian Hills is $1,800. And LMPD is their starting salary is 80,860.
For a retiree rehire. Now, if you hiring somebody that hasn't been to an academy or anything like that, it's considerably lower, but they also give them an additional $8,000 for walking through the door and making it a year. And then it immediately, within a year or so, it jumps up to 60,000.
It's almost 72 by the time.
Yeah.
How
By
does
the
it,
time
how
it's
does it do, I saw in the paper today that there's a new contract that they're working on. Is that included here? Do you think it would?
Oh, no, these are current salaries before any raises. And I didn't put this out for anybody because I don't think that it's fair. But the figures that they're told that there's several of them that'll have significant raises on here. And they're not on here because since it's not been voted through, I did not think that would be fair for me to put that on there. But I know several of them that will add a minimum of $3,000 on there to several of them. And of course, LMPD's was posted. What are they're getting 755 and 5, or is it?
It's a 22% raise total.
For 3, yeah.
You're behind. So 23. And it's got to be about a 20, 21, 22% raise.
So if LMPD officer out of the academy, makes that much.
It's
Well, out of the academy, when you're in the academy, it's not quite as much. It's in the
Well,
low.
you're graduate, you're out of the three years. How much?
That's our base.
It's at least in the 60s, but he also gets an $8,000 signing bonus for being hired. So,
So Jeff, the thought here that, are we struggling to hire the,
yeah, we are having difficulty in getting the people that we were able to get before. And those are the ones that we have to get, because if you have to hire somebody and send them through the academy, those people you have to pay the pension on. It has to be hazardous duty. You have to pay a full insurance package on them. And you have to pay the entire time that they're in the police academy, which is going to be 6 months. And then after that, they can't be out on the street for at least another 3 months while they're training. So you're paying a salary and benefits and everything for, you can almost call it a full year before you even see it. And then that same salary or whatever would be well over $100,000 for an inexperienced person.
So the 2 officers, we have 3 vacancies. Two of the officers who left for more money.
Yes,
One
without
went
a
back
doubt.
to LMPD.
One went to LMPD and
He'd
another
been
one.
in here a number of years, but he got a great deal at LMPD and he went back
Yes, and then the other one went back after what, 4 months? But he didn't go to LMPD.
He went to Oldham County.
He went to Oldham County and got it.
So I'm hesitate to say this, but I'm going to say it because it's the truth and everybody needs to know it. We are currently, and I'm not going to talk about which shifts, but we are currently not fully staffing 24/7 in the city. So Jeff and Tony have worked with the 8th Division of the LMPD. They understand that we're without officers during certain hours, and they're available. We've got as much right for them to be here as anybody else. But the reality is we are not staffing 24/7. And I think it's important for us this is a national situation.
Not on every day. This is
Not every day.
Yeah,
Not
this
every
is
day.
Yes.
But
There are occasions when we are not.
correct. But this is all over the country. And the LMPD, I think, is down in the hundreds of officers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. And just for example, the city of Pittsburgh, as large as Pittsburgh is, there are times in the evening that there are only 20 patrolmen total that are patrolling the entire city of Pittsburgh because they're so low, as large as Pittsburgh. So you can imagine that.
It's a challenge.
You know, if you look at this sheet, don't lure yourself into looking and seeing if we're somewhat compared to 1 or 2 departments. It only takes one department.
Well, and for example, Indian Hills, because of what they pay or whatever, it took them 3 years to fill one vacancy. It took them 3 years.
3 departments for us to lose people. And our people are being actively, our officers are all.
There's a potential. That's why we're here tonight explaining to you that we think this situation could be.
Well, we
serious.
appreciate all that you do.
Because there's the potential that we could lose 2 in the next 3 months. That would be conservative. In the next 3 months, there's a possibility we could lose 2.
Old County faced this last year during this time. They were probably, I guess, we're about to lose almost half. And they had, I think, 4 people at the time that didn't go back. They had a meeting, ended up changing the match. Immediately, those 4 people withdrew their applications to Metro. Immediately, the range people had 4 people put up for Old County. So they had to turn around and try to match them. It's a
A year and a half or 2 years ago, they paid less than we did. They were not in competition whatsoever.
Is everybody on this list short?
No, I think that, well, it's hard to say. Well, obviously Metro is short.
Oh, yeah.
Just doing the list.
My understanding is that J-Town and St. Matthews are able,
Yeah, St. Matthews for the most part would be full. Indian Hills, I think, is full now. Middletown is close to full. I don't think Oldham County is full.
pretty close.
Linden is always looking. Linden is to the point where they're even going beneath taking retirees. They're just taking a lateral transfer. They've hired a number of deputies away from the sheriff's department that don't even have the retirement age. So they're having to pay the other benefit packages for them.
well, this is
They
helpful.
basically hired them away from the sheriff's department that aren't retired yet. So they'll have to pay their retirement.
So everybody essentially is fishing from the same pool, same
Yes.
labor pool. I mean, you're not.
Yes,
Side of
yes.
Jefferson County or.
Yeah, we've still got feelers out in some areas and we're hopefully that we've got, we were talking about it already. We've got some prospects, but if these other ones are hiring it, and then there's some pretty low key departments on here, we would be hard pressed to snatch them up if these other ones get wind that they may be available.
So this is helpful information. We're into the budget process and we'll take all this into consideration. And certainly appreciate your work on this and all your efforts with recruiting and retention of our officers.
Well, Thomas retired in October and then Ernst in February of this year. So
Okay, so, okay, so it's the last time.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Let's move on the agenda to unfinished business. The first item, second reading, ordinance 635, series 2024. Is there, and that's the ordinance relating to the amendment of the building regulation. This was on tree replacement. So is there a motion for second reading and approval?
So
of the ordinance?
move.
Is there a second? I need a, there's a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Do we have a good summary of this ordinance?
Well, the summary is whenever you remove a tree as part of your building process, you have to acknowledge that and go to the forestation board and discuss it with the forestation board on what plan you have to replace some of the tree canopy. It doesn't have to be all of the tree canopy. But they will assist in placement, type of tree, the number of trees need to be replaced.
Okay. Is there, and this was essentially what we did with Chase. The ordinance wasn't in place, but that's what happened.
That's exactly.
Effectively. And it worked well. So is there further discussion or questions for David about this ordinance? If not, are we ready to vote? Frank Fulcher?
Yes.
I guess Chris Gorman's not a member of the council. David Holmes?
Yes.
John Evans?
Yes.
Don Gibson?
Yes.
Sarah Hines? And John Clark, I think, is still with us.
Yes.
Thank you, John. Thanks for staying with us. Okay, that's now approved and will be entered into our ordinances. The next is second reading of an amended budget that we presented last month and that received a first reading. And I would like to, and John mentioned this, we propose to essentially withdraw this and come back at the next meeting when we've got a better idea of the tornado expense and present a new amended budget at that time. So I would like to ask for a motion permitting the mayor to withdraw the amended budget presented at the March 18 meeting with a view toward a new amended budget being presented on at the May meeting. Someone make that motion. Okay, is there a second? Discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Again, it's gone. Any opposed? Okay, that ordinance is withdrawn this evening. And I'll mention, our plan is to have a special meeting on May 30th. That's everyone's schedule. I've forgotten the time. We said 3 o'clock on Thursday, May 30th, for the purpose of presenting the budget for the 24-25 fiscal year for first reading. So we hope to have that ready. We hope to have all the numbers in place and to be able to present that in a special meeting on Thursday, May 30th.
When will the backup material be available?
In advance of that, I mean, we'll get it to you as promptly as we can. The goal is to get it in everybody's hands promptly. All right, new business. We have municipal order 2, an order consenting to adoption of the amended City of Prospect investment policy dated April 9, 2024, that was included in the materials and that Susan Nicholson referred to earlier. Is there a motion to approve the amended investment policy?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so Councilman Fulcher made the motion. Councilman Holmes seconded. Is there discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That municipal order is approved, and we have that new investment policy effective this evening in place.
Mayor, can we go back and on the second reading of the tree ordinance, read,
Oh, yeah, if you would,
I would,
thank you.
City of Prospect ordinance number 635, series 2024, an ordinance relating to the amendment and modification of chapter 150, building regulations of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Prospect.
On the copy of the agenda that I've got, it still lists the nomination of John, but I think we've got an amended agenda that deletes that from back here. Yeah, I'm looking at the old. With that, we've completed the items on the agenda. Is there a motion? Is there any further business to come before the council? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, is there a second? All in favor, please say aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, John Clark. You're a trooper.
You're welcome.
Yes, in Key West.
I think you're
You
the
also.
only person in Key West who's participating in a city council meeting in Kentucky tonight.
I think you're right. Thank you,
We sure
guys.
appreciate it. Thank you for participating.
No problem.
Mr. Mayor.
See you soon.